Also big tonight, an interim court ruling in Barbados Monday means that the ousted leader and general secretary of the feuding opposition Democratic Labour Party will effectively remain suspended, at least for the time being. The move to have Ronnie Yearwood and Steve Blackett reinstalled has been at least stalled for now, but the lawyer Shamar Bovell said he has confidence in their case and looks forward to making it in court next month. On Monday, Chief Justice Leslie Haynes ruled that Andre Worrell and Pedro Shepherd will remain as acting president and general secretary for the next month. Veteran DLP member Ricardo Williams has filed a certificate of urgency requesting the DLP's executive take the necessary steps to restore Yearwood and Blackett to their post. Williams is trying to restore Yearwood and Blackett to their elected post after they were suspended by the DLP's General Council. The now effective DLP political leader, MP Ralph Thorne, said Monday's ruling means that Worrell and Shepherd should be allowed to do their work of the party. Attorney Hal Gollop represented the two.
The Chief Justice has expressed his concern that nothing be done to bring the Democratic Labour Party into disrepute. And as such, he has ordered that the status quo be maintained, and that status quo is that Mr. Pedro Shepherd, who is the first respondent, is the de facto General Secretary, and Mr. Andre Worrell, who has been acting as President, that the two of them be allowed to do all things that are necessary for the proper functioning of the party, and that the substantive holders of those offices be advised by counsel for the complainant accordingly.
Late Monday, we asked Polston political analyst Peter Wickham to explain the significance of the day's ruling.
We have been hearing both sides speaking as though they were a legitimate voice of the Democratic Labour Party. And it's been a bit confusing because it's been a bit uncertain to know exactly what's happening. I think that today's ruling has done a couple of things. The fact that it was prompted by the, one could say, the Yearwood and Blackett faction suggests that that faction determined that it had it basically did not have the upper hand, and it sought to get the upper hand by going to court and making an application. The response of the court thus far suggests that the court is at least persuaded for the time being that the legitimate voice of the DLP is the faction that would be supported by Ralph Thorne. And it is left to be seen on the 26th of June whether information that is presented by the Yearwood faction can change anything that we've heard so far. But I think in the meantime, at least the clarity we have is that, look, the Democratic Labour Party, for the avoidance of doubt, is being now led by an acting general secretary and an acting president. And those two people have the power in the meantime to do whatever is necessary to run the organization until such time as the court is persuaded differently on the 26th of June when the matter comes up for hearing. So I think this is substantial clarity. And it helps us to understand exactly where the power within the Democratic Labour Party, if you can call it that, rests at this point in time.
Wickham was asked to put in context the current feud within the Barbados opposition DLP.
The Democratic Labour Party has a peculiar constitution in that it vests the leadership of the party, the political leadership of the party, which is really the important thing. Invested in the person that has a member of parliament that has a majority of support. It doesn't assume, or it assumes that the party will never be in a situation where it doesn't have members of parliament, and that's exactly what has happened now. So in this situation, the fact that there was no political leader, and then one appeared because he crossed the floor, once the individual was appointed, it became clear that he would be the political leader. To me, this need not have been problematic because the Democratic Labour Party has had a political leader and a president before that were not the same person. My feeling is that could have worked. However, the reality is that on this occasion, there was clearly conflict and the two sides were on a collision course. I think some unfortunate statements were made largely by the General Secretary, Steve Blackett. And the whole thing came to a head at a meeting some time ago, which was apparently suspended, but then continued under a different arrangement, a different chairman. and that party made that meeting made some fundamental decisions in terms of suspension of the two key members, which the court seems to be persuaded for the time being is valid. So this is really the background to the whole thing. It's a power play. It's not necessary in my view, but ultimately that's what it is. It's two sides of the political party, the original and the new, and the original is trying to hold on to what power and influence it has. The new side is essentially trying to flex its muscles to demonstrate that it does have power.
He also spoke on the potential long-term implications of the feud.
I think long-term implication is that it sends a signal that the Democratic Labour Party is not ready for office. That is the public signal it sends. My greater concern right now is that the Democratic Labour Party is 2 years into the previous government. The last government lasted 3 years, which means that if you use that matrix, Prime Minister Motley could theoretically call an early election, and they do not have a single candidate chosen. So you're looking at 2 years in, a party that lost all of the seats, that was unable to defend a single seat in the election, is now for the second time without a seat in Parliament. No, well, they have a seat in Parliament from someone who crossed the floor. But my greater concern is that not a single candidate has been chosen, and you have 2 years that have passed. That was one of my main criticisms of Ronnie Yearwood, that he seemed anxious to get on with the job of criticizing the current government and demonstrating why he ought to replace the current government. But we still hadn't heard what candidates were in place, what programs the party has, what is the philosophical position. And in my opinion, the whole thing was backwards. That to me is a major challenge the Democratic Labour Party faces now, that it still does not have a clear program of action. It doesn't have candidates. And when all of this is said and done, the DLP still needs to settle down and determine candidates. The larger picture is that there's 3 seats that the DLP can possibly win at this time, all things being equal. And I think there's going to be a bit of jostling for those seats. So whoever comes out on top of this legal battle, in my opinion, is in a better position to influence the outcome in terms of who gets to go into those seats. And I think that's probably